Hey, welcome back. Hey, welcome back. Cool. Let us go and we're just gonna react to some videos. Let's see, what do I want to learn about or watch or something? I just want to find this one video. It's literally
idea about basketball that absolutely lives and breathes the molecular making of what made people like Takehiko Inoue become so obsessed with it. At the end of the day, all I'm really talking about for opinion to find an to try and figure out who was based on who. Looking back now, some of them were fairly obvious, like Rukawa's playstyle and personality was blatantly based off of Michael Jordan, even down to the same arm sleeve that they It was on December 3rd of 2018 when a guy by the name of Tatsuki Fujimoto made a manga called This, and because of that a couple things happened. First it was this, and then this, and then this, and then this, and then this. Let's just be honest with ourselves, nobody ever plans for things to turn out this way. I went to a convention recently and the line literally looked like the entrance to a fucking Coachella. There's people barking. Let me just say that one more time. There's people barking in the middle of a conference. You mean to tell me that's normal? Even my own Cuban mom knows what this manga is. All of this made me want to ask 3 questions. Questions that initially I thought were pretty simple to answer, only for me to quickly realize that I was about to enter into a literal abyss of the internet. Some of you may be wondering, Alex, where have you been for 3 months? Well, thanks for asking. I've been losing my fucking sanity trying to unravel this phenomenon. The first question was, how? How did things end up this way? How did we go from a drawing of a stupid little dog to this crowd, these memes, these fans, these cosplayers, these fans, and about a million bajillion views on just about anything related to it? The second question was, why? Why do people like me and so many others become obsessed with these things? And not just for Chainsaw Man, but literally anything related to its author. An author who has a very, very long history of making some of the weirdest shit I've ever seen in my life. And that leaves us with the third question. The third question was so hard to answer that I ended up having to go through some of the most ridiculous tasks I've ever done in my life. Part of the reason why this video is so long is because I may or may not have actually formulated data, drawn for a month straight, read just about every single piece of information about this deranged man, and also done an entire breakdown of why this image exists. It's to the point where I've gone so far deep into this journey that I practically became Tatsuki Fujimoto. If you clicked on this video thinking I'd summarize to you what the plot of Chainsaw Man is, then I'm sorry. And I also have no intention of being like, yes, good evening, my fellow concierge. Today I will be discussing why this dog is a physical representation of fear, struggle, and anguish. Oh no, believe me when I say that this video is going to be much weirder. So feel free to grab a chair, some popcorn, and a bottle of Windex to strap into this very long, weird, and messy journey where we uncover everything that happened before December 3rd of 2018 and everything after, with the first question being, what in the fuck is going on, man? And if I had to take a guess, I would say it started somewhere with this image. Believe it or not, there was actually a point where Tatsuki Fujimoto was known as that guy who made a manga called Fire Punch, and before that he was a college student known for making some very strange one-shots. But one of the hardest questions you could ask is, who exactly is Tatsuki Fujimoto? There was only 2 things that people ever really knew about him. 1, he was a young manga artist winning a shit ton of awards, and 2, this weird symbol was his identity. I would definitely say that reading his one-shots is an experience, with one of them being Little Sister, Elder Sister, which is about 2 siblings that literally draw each other naked. Another one he made back in 2013 was Sasaki Stop the Bullet, which is about a guy who literally stops a bullet Cause he wants to bang his teacher. Multiple times I've caught myself asking the question, who the hell makes something like this? And weirdly enough, I think that actually was the appeal to a lot of his work. Fujimoto has been publishing these since he was only 17 years old, and when asked about his early creative process, he would describe it as 0 days of storyboarding, 3 months of inking, which just isn't something you hear from anyone ever. But that was just the way this guy worked, whether it was romance, action, or two sisters drawing each other naked. It felt like this dude was willing to say and draw just about anything. Other than that, there's really only like 2 videos that even exist of him on the internet. In one of them, he records himself trying to levitate, and it has become one of the biggest mysteries to me as to why this has 2 fucking million views. Meanwhile, the other one is a song he wrote about his favorite food. The best way I could describe Fujimoto is that he's like a car crash you can't look away from. I'd never go as far as to say that these one-shots were good, but it was little things here and there that made reading something from Fujimoto feel unique. The intensity, the ridiculously over-the-top scenarios, and I think nothing highlights that feeling better than his one-shot called Love is Blind, which is a simple story about a kid that wants to ask out one of his classmates, only for every single inconvenience in the world to prevent him from doing so. First his teacher stops him, then some dude on the street tries to mug them, and then a fucking alien comes down to destroy the planet. But even under all of these ridiculous circumstances, the main character proceeds to confess his feelings anyways, which objectively speaking is just hilarious. It's such an extreme and weird way to express the idea that it's hard to ask someone out. And let me just say, I've never found a one-shot to be more relatable in my life. While most of his work was strange, I think under all these bizarre scenarios he'd come up with, there was still some, no pun intended, heart to them. Because if there was one thing you were guaranteed when reading something that was made by him, it was that you were going to enter some weird and unexplored territory. Even if some of them are about 2 sisters drawing each other naked. Fujimoto has even stated in an interview that he keeps his identity a secret in fear of someone trying to kill him, which from what we've seen earlier kind of does make sense. But part of me also feels like this dude should just avoid being on the internet in general, because at one point he tried to make a Twitter, but instead of making a normal profile, he made one impersonating his sister. Is it just me, or am I starting to see a pattern here? But I actually like to think that because there's so much mystery as to what kind of person Fujimoto was, that made his work so much more compelling. It was almost like the only way you could understand him better was by reading his work. And it wasn't until 2016 where he'd eventually land a shot at making a manga for none other than one of the biggest magazines of all time. And right when he was given this opportunity, the guy did the exact opposite of what you would expect. Give yourself some time to really picture this in your head. You, young, handsome, and full of dreams, you've been working hard day in and day out, constantly drawing in hopes of one day becoming a famous manga artist. And then it finally happens. But not only were you provided with an opportunity, you were given the opportunity to make a name for yourself, because you just received a call back from none other than Shonen Jump. And this meant that if you played your cards right, you could be a star. You could have your name right alongside the greats. But there's one thing. As likely as you are to succeed from this, there's a much higher chance that you could also get axed at any moment. And that's because while Shonen Jump is known for producing some of the biggest names in the industry, it's also known for cutting off anything they consider to be less than great. And most manga artists would be in this position and do, you know, what everybody wants. Now, the reason why I made up this scenario is because this is the exact opportunity that was given to Tatsuki Fujimoto. Just coming out of college, it must have been like a dream come true for a 22-year-old to get a chance like this. I'm literally a year younger than that, and I already shit myself thinking about how many people watch these videos, so I can't even imagine being in his shoes, knowing that you are about to make one of the most important decisions in your life at such a young age. And actually, here's an exact reenactment of what Fujimoto ended up doing. Lately, excuse me, everyone. I would like for you all to meet our new up-and-coming mangaka. Please welcome Tatsuki Fujimoto. Please have a seat, Mr. Fujimoto. We are very excited to be working with you. Actually, we're big fans ourselves, and we'd love to hear what kind of ideas you might have for your next up-and-coming manga. Is everything all right, Mr. Fujimoto? Did he just pick his fucking nose? Sorry, I'm not exactly following you. If I wanted to, I could actually split the viewers that are watching this video right now into two separate categories. There's those who have never read Fire Punch, and then there's those who should probably go see a therapist. To those of you that aren't familiar with this manga, then this next segment is for you. Take a look at this cover and tell me what exactly stands out to you. And then to follow up, take a wild guess as to what this story could.
I heard this is fucked up. I heard this is really fucked up. So let's get into this and see what it's about. Fuck. Okay, let's get into it and see what this is all about. Fire Punch
could possibly be about. Now, most of you are probably going to be like, guy plus fire plus probably likes to punch people. And if that was your first impression, that's fine, because I honestly thought the same thing as well. But all it really takes is 1 or 2 chapters for you to realize that you couldn't be further from the truth. I will now be summarizing to you the disaster that is the first chapter of this manga. Fire Punch takes place in a world covered in snow, and the story is told through the perspective of a little boy named Agni, who was born with a special ability that people in this universe would call a blessing. No one truly knows how or why this phenomenon happens, but many consider it to be a gift that was handed down from God himself. Some able to use the ability to fly, use super strength, or even manipulate electricity, and our main protagonist Agni was born with the blessing of regeneration, alongside his sister also having the same but much weaker version of his powers. Now, I'd like to ask you all a question. If you lived in a village that had no food and you had regenerative powers, what would you do? Well, if your name starts with...
Yo, what the fuck? If that was the situation, if you lived in a town with no food and you were able to regenerate your body, bro, you just cut off your limbs and like feed them to the people? Is that what's gonna happen? Yo, it's messed up. Is it just straight cannibalism?
With F and rhymes with Bujimoto, then your answer was, duh, feed them my limbs. Yes, you heard that right. Agni is actually the main source of food for this village, which had people feeling pretty divided because on one hand, and some barbecue sauce. So the creative process for that joke was that because it's a manga with cannibalism in it, I thought it would be funny to say that the villagers would also have a certain preference of condiments when eating a child's hand. So you have a village that is feeling I should also mention that Agni's sister wants his babies because of course it's written by fucking Tatsuki Fujimoto. You have a village that is feeling pretty conflicted over this. People don't want to starve to death, but they also don't want to have to eat child soup. And what makes matters even worse is that not too long after, a military group decides to take base at this village. And it doesn't take too long before they find out where exactly they've been getting these resources from. And once their commander hears about this, the original plan is out of the question. No longer were they going to take shelter here. Instead, they were instructed to eviscerate the entire village. Their leader Doma was born with a blessing of fire, more specifically fire that never goes out. And because he considered this whole fiasco to be an act against God, he proceeded to burn away the whole village, with the only remaining survivors being Agni and Luna. Now remember when I mentioned what their powers were? Well, because of that, they are now constantly being cooked alive, screaming in pain as their bodies collapse, only for it to grow right back. But since Luna was born with a much weaker sense of regeneration, eventually she gives out, and she looks over to Agni, ready to say her last words. A smile comes out as she then tells Agni that he needs to live. And
Bro, that's traumatic as fuck. Imagine burning alive and never dying. That's intense, man. I think your nerves would, but then everything just grows back, so even your nerves grow back, so you always feel that pain. I think at some point you just get desensitized to the pain.
And what's followed up by this is honestly one of the most horrifying panels I've ever seen in my life, because this panel is the very moment where Agni realizes what he must do. He had to avenge all the innocent families that were taken away by the hands of Doma. Days pass by as Agni can't even move a single limb. Weeks go on and it hurts so much to the point where he can't even scream, with the only thought that's going through his mind is Luna's last wish. As time went on, there was finally a point where he could withstand these flames. It took years for Agni to be able to train himself to breathe and walk again. But this man who was taking his first steps onto snow was no longer the kid we once knew. And it's after this point where the real story of Fire Punch begins. A story where a grown man named Agni...
That's a crazy setup for a story. Honestly, you don't see shit like that nowadays.
first steps onto snow was no longer the kid we once knew. And it's after this point where the real story of Fire Punch begins. A story where a grown man named
That's a crazy setup for a story. Honestly, you don't see shit like that nowadays. Fuck, it's like buffering and shit. How does that have excellent connection? Why is it fucking buffering and shit?
Agni must spend the rest of his life enduring this pain for the sake of everyone. Do you see what I mean when I say that this cover lies to you? This has nothing to do with a guy made out of fire who likes to punch people. This is about a guy on fire trying to avenge his weirdly romantic sister. And to really paint the picture here, you have to understand that this was labeled as a shonen series. When it was 2016, you could either choose to read Demon Slayer, Haikyuu, One Piece, Food Wars, or you could just read something like this. And as more chapters came out, more people were either in shock or completely confused. Half of the subreddit consists of people asking what the hell they even just read. I had a friend pick it up recently and he went from this is the coolest thing ever to this is the biggest piece of shit I've ever read, all within a week. And I haven't even touched on the references upon references that are in this manga, such as Star Wars or Tom Cruise. There's even a character in this manga named Togata, who, if I could somehow summarize her, is basically a manga character or on references that I've ever read. And he went to of people asking what people were either in shock or completely confused. Half of the subreddit consists of people asking what the hell they even just read. I had a friend pick it up recently and he went from this is the coolest thing ever to this is the biggest piece of shit I've ever read, all within a week. And I haven't even touched on the references upon references that are in this manga, such as Star Wars or Tom Cruise. There's even a character in this manga named Togata, who, if I could somehow summarize her, is basically a manga character that's trying to make a movie out of the manga that they're in. If you thought that was confusing,
I think it's pretty dumb. That seems really fucking dumb. Man, it sucks that they fucked it up like that, or that he fucked it up like that. But whatever.
Well, so did everyone else that read it. As a matter of fact, later on in the video, you will learn that the most frequently used adjective that were used to describe Fire Punch were actually weird and confusing. And you might be asking, Alex, where exactly did you get this data from? Well, I'm glad you asked. Nathan. It's not like any of this happened by accident. Tatsuki Fujimoto knew exactly what he was doing. He knew a series like this would cause quite a reaction. There's been many interviews where he's mentioned that his readers were
Okay, my video is buffering like crazy. I gotta figure this out before I continue. Live stream video buffering. I wonder if I can do this in my settings. Where the video, no, output.